Yes. Okay, recording now. All right. So we said cell reference is also called cell address, and it is the name given to a particular cell. For instance, where my cursor is now, or where the insertion point is called cell I6. It is called cell reference because it's making reference to a particular cell, and that cell is referring to is cell I6. Again, if I put the cursor here, I am now making reference to cell B6. Okay, so that's what cell reference is all about. All right, it's the name of a cell, the name given to a particular cell. It's either called reference, it's either called cell reference, or we call it cell address. Yes. Okay. Now there are three types of cell reference we have in Excel. The first one is relative cell reference. Number two, absolute cell reference. And number three, mixed cell reference. I'll take it again. Relative cell reference, absolute cell reference, and then mixed cell reference. Now, for relative cell reference, by way of definition, it is defined as the cell reference that goes with the formula. Okay? It moves or goes with the formula. What that means is, for instance, all the while we've been doing some calculations, let me take us back a bit. The time we did, let's use that date. Um, okay, let's use this place. Okay, if you remember, the time we did this particular place, after writing the formula, of course, picking the end date and then the start date, closing our function, we said enter. Now it gave us the answer. Now, because of relative cell reference, we could double click here and then it will follow the formula and replicate what we have done all the way down to the remaining part of the table. That is what we mean by relative cell reference. It can relate to the other cells that are coming behind. That's relative cell reference. And Excel naturally obeys the law of relative cell reference. That is why you could do what you just did now. Okay? So that's relative cell reference. But then there are some cases where relative cell reference does not work. In such a case, when you try to autofill, it does not work. I'll give you an example. In this particular figures we have here, by the way, this is a kind of an HRO data set. As you can see, we have the employee name column, the gross salary column, the basic salary column, housing, transport, and health. So this is absolutely an HRO data set. Now, what we're saying is, if you have the gross salary of each of these staff members and you have the percentage distribution of the salary among each of these options here, basic, housing, transport, and health, you will be able to find what percentage of this gross salary is given to basic salary. And what do? You say 50%, now you start with your equal sign, 50% times 800,000 will give you 400,000. That means half of the gross salary is basic salary. Now, ideally, if you double click here, it's meant to autofill. But because in this very case, relative cell reference does not work, that is why it will not give you the right figures. All right. Now, the reason why it's giving us error is because ideally, just like we have in the first case, it picked the right cells, which is cell E, cell E3, which has the 50% multiplied by cell D5, which is 800,000. So if you put your question in the answer, the address bar will give you the right thing. E3 multiplied by E5. Now, coming to the second place, you notice that it picked wrongly. It picked cell E4 multiplied by cell D6. Now, where is E4? E4 is one that has basic salary, where my cursor is at the moment. So you want to multiply E4 by D6, which is wrong. That is why it's giving us a wrong or an error response. Likewise, the other ones we have down here. Okay? All right. Now, to make this calculation give you the right answer, you have to lock this cell. Before then, we have been able to define relative cell reference. And let us define absolute cell reference. Now, absolute cell reference is a cell reference that does not go with the formula, or it doesn't follow the formula. That is why in this case it did not follow the formula. That is why we could not autofill. Okay, that's what we mean by absolute cell reference. Then the last one, which is mixed cell reference, is defined as a combination of absolute and relative cell reference. Okay, I hope it's clear. but by the time my practicalize it, it will be very clear. All right, so now we have done this one, and we are saying to be able to autofill, you have to make this 50,000 or 50%. You have to make it constant. When you make it constant, you're saying, Mr. 50%, go and multiply all these guys here and get the right answers here. Remember, the reason why we got wrong answers is because 50% did not multiply all these guys. Excel was busy picking different cells and multiplying with these guys here, thereby giving us wrong answers. Okay? But if we can make 50% a constant, that means we are saying do not move. Stay where you are and then multiply everybody here and put the answers here. Then we have a situation of relative cell reference, meaning that you can actually autofill and get the answers correct. And let's see how that works. So let's remove this guy. So let's go back. Equal sign, you pick 50%. Now, to make a cell constant, you lock the cell. And to lock the cell, you need to press your F4 key, your F4 button. Now, when you press your F4 button, you notice that the address of this cell will change to $E $3. Let me do it again. Before we lock the cell, if you click on the 50%, it will show you cell E3. Okay, but once you lock it, it changes to $E $3. Let's lock it again. 50%. You can see showing E3 in the address bar. But once you lock it, by pressing your F4 key once, it changes to $E $3. So anytime you put your insertion point or cursor on a particular cell, and the cell address is telling you $A $2, or $sign this, $sign that, it means